What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to share my thoughts and feedback on a fairly hot topic regarding Vanguard, and this is the fact that we don't have factions. And what this means is you could potentially have a player on the enemy team that looks literally identical to a player on your team. And especially right now in the beta build of the game, where we don't have access to unique character skins and there are a limited number of operators, this is actually a very frequent occurrence. You're constantly seeing your teammate look literally identical to your enemy, and that's obviously not ideal in a team-based first-person shooter. Additionally, with this game being set in World War II, it is a little bit strange to not have factions because the war was literally Axis versus Allies, and so this doesn't fit with the theme or the setting at all either. But that's not so much my argument. For me, I care about multiplayer gameplay more than anything. I'm not too concerned about perfect authenticity or realism or anything, especially if it means you're sacrificing that authenticity or realism for a better gameplay experience. However, with this decision they've made to not have factions in the game, not only does this go against the whole authenticity and realism argument, this also harms the gameplay experience. Now, is it a deal breaker for me? No, it's not really that big of a deal in my opinion for core game modes, and especially as time goes on with the game and there's more and more operators and skins to be unlocking, to the point where almost nobody's going to have the exact same outfit anyway. This is more so just a minor annoyance in core game modes. It's definitely a completely avoidable annoyance, and it's kind of frustrating that they're making this decision and including this annoyance for no good reason other than making it easier for them to sell skins and bundles. But like I said, at least for me as a core player, this isn't going to be a major deal breaker for me. It doesn't completely destroy the gameplay experience, it's just a bit annoying at times. Having said this though, I am kinda terrified for hardcore players. For those that enjoy the hardcore game modes where if you shoot a teammate, you will either kill your teammate or you'll get ricochet damage, I don't know how they're going to handle it this year, it's going to significantly impact your gameplay experience trying to decide on the fly if that's an enemy or a teammate. Now, the argument against that might be, well, there's going to be a red name tag above the enemy, whereas the teammates will have a different colored nameplate. However, sometimes you only see a small section of the enemy's body, and therefore you don't get to see that nameplate. So, in hardcore especially, you're really going to have to make a tough decision and guess whether or not that's an enemy or a teammate that you're going to be shooting at, and you could be punished if that turns out to be a teammate. Additionally, that gives you one extra step that you have to check for before taking that shot, which will be impacting your gunfights. In every other Call of Duty game in hardcore game modes, if you had good knowledge of the various skins and which side were on your team and which sides were on the other team, you wouldn't need to make that extra step of not only seeing the character model, but then also looking up for a red nameplate and then deciding to fire the shot. You would see a certain skin, know immediately that that's an enemy player, and then you pull the trigger and kill them. So yeah, for hardcore modes especially, I do think this could potentially be a pretty serious issue gameplay-wise, unless they do something to mitigate this. And this is where I wanted to get into my feedback and maybe some potential solutions, or at least some ways that they could maybe alleviate this issue a little bit. Honestly, the first solution that I have is to simply not do this in the first place and revert back to having factions just like we've always had in Call of Duty. However, unfortunately in the multiplayer reveal, this was actually one of their talking points that they decided to go with no factions, and therefore I do feel that this is a decision that is set in stone. I don't think we're going to be seeing a change to this, even though I think this is the best solution possible, because all of my other solutions are basically trying to put a band-aid on an issue that shouldn't be there in the first place. And I'll admit right up front, none of my solutions here are absolutely perfect solutions. The best solution I can think of is to simply add factions to the game. So assuming this isn't going to be changing, one option could be for each character skin, have two different color options essentially. So for one style of a jacket, for instance, let's just say we have a character model with a big jacket on, you could have that jacket come in a black color as well as a brown color, let's say, so it fits in with that World War II theme. And then even though the operators themselves will be the same person on either team, you can have it so one team is going to be the team that has more of the brown color palette, whereas the other team is going to have more of the darker or like black color palette. So you still select your operator, you still select the type of skin that you want on that operator. However, the color or tone of your clothing will change depending on which team you're on. And with this, as far as I'm aware, I don't think it would be too difficult to maintain the exact same like jacket style or exact same outfit style, but then just change up the color a little bit. I don't think that would be too much extra work on their end. However, it may limit some of their creativity with some of the outfits. Next up, something that I hope they do gameplay-wise and that could help alleviate this issue a little bit is have distinct footstep audio for teammates versus enemies. So preferably, teammates would have slightly quieter footsteps than enemy players, or maybe they could make it so it's a slightly higher pitch or a slightly lower pitch depending on if it's a teammate or an enemy. And this just has to be very subtle. It doesn't have to be a completely different type of audio, but if they made just a subtle change to where you could pretty reliably tell if it was a teammate or an enemy just through the sound of their footsteps, that could help alleviate this issue a little bit as well. Next up, another thing I noticed in the beta that did get me killed in a few situations because of this confusion with no factions is on the minimap, there is no indicator for verticality for your teammates. We have this indicator for enemy players. When a red dot shows up, if there's a little arrow above that dot, that means they are above your elevation, and if there's an arrow below the dot, they're below your elevation, and if there's no arrow, they're on roughly the same elevation as you. When it comes to teammates though, we don't get this indicator, and I've had several situations where I've been in a multi-story building, or on Hotel Royal for instance, where enemies can be on the rooftop or inside the building. I will see that there's a teammate, let's just say to my right, because I looked at my minimap, it says there's a teammate to the right of me, and then I see a character model there. Of course, I'm going to assume that's my teammate that I just saw on the minimap. But then, of course, that turns out to be an enemy, and I get killed because of that. So it would be nice to have some sort of indication of elevation for your teammates. However, doing a little arrow above or below their arrow on the minimap would be too cluttered in my opinion. So I think one other option that could help in this area, and honestly I think this is a good idea even if there were factions, I think this would be a neat idea for the minimap. If the teammate is on the same elevation as you, they will show up normally like they do right now. However, if they're on a different elevation, make their arrow fade out just slightly. I don't necessarily need to know if that teammate's above or below me, I just need to know that they are not on the same elevation as me. This little tweak to the minimap would greatly improve player awareness overall. However, the big downside to this one is it doesn't really help in hardcore game modes unless you happen to have a UAV in the air. And this brings me to the final little band-aid fix that I have for this lack of a faction issue, especially for hardcore game modes. And perhaps this change could be made just for hardcore game modes because I think it would be a little too much to see in core. This would be do what Modern Warfare tried to do when they first launched the game, and make this so you can see the outline of a teammate character model in blue through walls. At least if they're within a certain range or radius of you. Let's say if they're within 30 meters of you, they will show up through walls if you don't have a direct line of sight on them, and you'll see their actual player outline. This type of thing could help a little bit, although it could also take away from the hardcore experience. A lot of the hardcore experience is about not having all of this information fed to you, and instead you have to rely on sort of like your instincts and your knowledge and everything. But at least that would make it so you are less surprised if somebody comes around the corner and you have to quickly on the fly determine if that's a teammate or an enemy. It would make it a little bit easier to deal with that situation, I think. Now, I don't know how well that would be received by the hardcore community, perhaps even make it so you have an option to turn that on or off for yourself. But it's just one other thing that I could think of that would maybe help alleviate this completely preventable issue. And this is where I just wanted to have just a slight mini rant here about the frustration I've been having with a lot of games lately, where they're making decisions that are clearly designed to increase post-launch sales, but in doing so, it harms the gameplay experience. I fully understand why these decisions are made, because at the end of the day, these games are made to make money, but I really wish they would take more care and consideration when making certain decisions regarding monetization that directly impact the gameplay experience. I really wish they would weigh the pros and cons a whole lot better than they currently do, and try to come up with some better solutions that do allow them to increase their monetization without directly harming the gameplay, because that's what we're seeing in a lot of areas in many different games out there, and it's really frustrating to see the games industry go in this direction. But there we have it. That's my little rant on this. I'd like to know in the comments section below, what do you guys think about the fact that we have no factions in Vanguard? Do you think this is a major issue, like a complete deal breaker for you? Or is it sort of a minor issue for you like it is for me, where it's not a deal breaker, but it is kind of annoying and frustrating? Or is it something you literally just don't care about at all? Just let me know those thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.